What up, tribe? Welcome to Coffee Talk. Welcome to all my live viewers as well as my replay viewers. Thanks for hanging out with me. Coffee Talk, you might remember it, where I talk about something and I may or may not be drinking coffee. Today we're not drinking coffee. It's late in the day. We're working on a little bit of hot chocolate. It got a little cold in the Northwest, so you're gonna have to deal with it. Starting to do more of these. So I'm gonna just start chatting about some things that are on my mind, some things that are on the desk, and if anyone has any questions that they'd like to submit, you know what to do. Leave it in the comment section. If I don't answer them during the live broadcast, I will do my best to check it out later. For those of you hanging out with me, thanks for joining me on the live broadcast. So we're gonna get right to it because I don't know, we all got things to do and I don't want to bore you. So one of the questions I got a while back was a nurse, and I'm reading it for the screen over here, so y'all just gonna have to deal with it for a second. Any advice to new nurses when physically performing a skill for the first time? So we've all been there. Everybody is new at something at some point in their career, whether it's entry-level nursing or BSN level, if you're LPN, RN, CNA, if you're going from RN to an advanced practice role, and depending on what advanced practice role you decide to choose and pursue, there's always going to be skills that you're going to have to learn, and that first time you do it is a pressure cooker. I will tell you that the last time that I had to perform a new skill, which has been a while, I remember my hand shaking. I remember my hand shaking so bad that I had to use my other hand to hold it steady. And my preceptor, who was a physician at the time, actually, you know, we had a good rapport and was like, are you nervous? Just a bit. So I want you to understand that the first thing is, you're not alone. We all have been there. We all have had to do something for the first time. And anyone that tells you differently is just flat out lying to you, and they have forgotten what it feels like. So we're gonna start with that first. I'm trying to remember how to pull up the, here we go. Try to pull up the comment section here. We got a nice crowd joining us here. So it looks like Stephanie's in the house, and A4 22%. I remember you telling me your name one time, and it's been a while. I'm sorry. So you're gonna have to tell me every time that you show up in one of these things, because otherwise I'm not gonna remember. So thanks. So first thing is that you're not alone. We all are there. We all have been there. We all know what that feeling is like. That crushing nervousness that we all had the first time that we had to do something. I remember very specifically when I learned how to place an IV in my entry-level nursing school, which was a diploma program way back in the day. I remember my hand shaking then, and then when I first had to learn how to do central line placements as an advanced practice nurse, as a nurse practitioner in the ICU, hands shaking like a leaf. And I remember thinking to myself, how do I get my hands to stop shaking? Because this looks really bad. So it's okay to be nervous. The next thing that you should remember, and the next thing that you should think about, is that you may fail. You may absolutely 100% ball of flames, just completely and utterly fail in every way. And it may be because of skill, it could be because of the task at hand, also could be the patient themselves, or maybe we talk about differences in anatomy. We'll go with that. How's that? Because anyone who's ever done this, anyone who's ever been a nurse for more than 5 minutes has figured out that no two Foley placements are the same. It's the same thing for every other skill. Another thing that comes to mind is placing NGs. NGs, all very different. Some people have, you know, deviated septum. Some people have like this narrowing of their canal on one side or the other. Some people have broken noses. Just, it's amazing the variety you're gonna find. So be okay with failing. You should absolutely be okay with failing. Now, I remember when I was in my entry-level nursing program, we had, now this is how old school I am, old school, is that I remember in order to graduate, you had to place 3 peripheral IVs successfully before you could graduate. That's how old school I am, is that I know nursing schools these days, you guys, I don't even think you guys place IVs. I think they tell you that you'll learn it on the job. A lot of nursing schools don't do it because of liability. They don't want you to harm someone, or they don't have the liability insurance for it. I've heard a variety of reasons why nursing schools don't do it anymore, but I was lucky back then. So that's the caveat, is that there will be cases where you have to successfully perform a skill. That just means that you should practice a lot before you get to that point, if you have the ability. And if you don't have the ability, maybe you should talk to someone about getting that ability. The next thing is preparation. You have to prepare in every way. Other than the psychomotor skill itself, the hand-eye coordination, the anthropomorphic delicacies that are involved in performing a skill, you should have rehearsed this particular skill and know it like the back of your hand. I mean, as good as one knows the back of your hand. You should know the steps from start to finish. It goes a long way when you start to fumble, when you start to freeze, when your brain goes and just literally just stops. You're like mid-stroke, in the middle, get hands dirty, gowned up, doing your thing, and your brain just locks up and freezes, completely freezes. That's when preparation comes in handy. 1, because you can go over the steps in your brain, and 2, if you got to call an audible and you need to phone a friend, whether that be a colleague, a co-worker, a classmate, or your preceptor, or the person who's instructing you, when you literally stop in your tracks and you go, excuse me, I literally don't know what to do next. It's not that I'm dumb, I'm just really, really nervous. And if I'm your instructor and you tell me those things, you and I are going to have a great day, because we're going to start from scratch. You're going to talk me through it. You're going to tell me what you remember, and we're going to figure out what parts you don't know. And it's real easy to fix those problems. And it's also a really good confidence booster, because you are reminding yourself that it's not that you don't know how to do something, you just haven't done it yet. So those are 3 things I can think of that come to mind when you're practicing a new skill. Looks like we had a question here from Stephanie. She said, have I ever considered psychiatric nursing? No. Heck no. No. Psychiatric nursing is about as far up on the totem pole as pediatric nursing for me. 2 things that are a guarantee that I never wanted to do and had no interest in, and stayed as far away as possible, were pediatrics and anything that had to do with psych. Not because they're bad things, they're just not my jam in any way. I knew that I'd be bad at both those jobs. Pediatrics, because kids frighten me. At least, let me rephrase that. Sick kids frighten me. I also, I don't know. I had no interest in I don't think my heart could have taken it. And that's the honest truth. I don't think my heart could have taken it. Because I work in the intensive care unit, I probably would have made my way into a pediatric ICU or a neonatal ICU. And it's one thing to deal with death when it's an adult, but to deal with death as a child or an infant, caring for someone like that, no way, couldn't do it. I don't have it. I don't have it in me. I would not be able to cope appropriately. And psych nursing, I'm inequipped. I wasn't able to make those connections. I don't know the best way to describe it, but my brain just doesn't work that way in any way, shape, or form. My brain doesn't work that way. I'm very analytical and scientific, A plus B equals C. Evidence, data, those kind of things. I don't have that other side of my brain that has that. I just don't have the ability. I have a very good sense of self and a very good, I have good emotional intelligence to know that I'd be bad at that job. Two things I know I'd be bad at, pediatrics and psych. So good question. We have another question in the live audience. Bo C Company. I'm probably mispronouncing that and chopping it to pieces. How should new grads go about finding a job in this new COVID world? I have released a couple videos that talk about some of the things you can do in regards to job searches and job placement. You can look those up. For those of you that don't know how to do that, listening to this on the record, if you go to YouTube's website, main site, you type in my name, Sean Dent, and then whatever concept you're interested in, Sean Dent job, Sean Dent interview, Sean Dent graduation, and it will come up, it will spit out all the videos that have those keywords in it. You can also hit the plus sign, Sean Dent plus, and then whatever it is you're interested in, and you can find all my videos. You can also go to my main web page or my main YouTube channel, and there's a search hourglass on the main page there. So how does it differ with COVID? In my honest opinion, and this is just an opinion, I don't have facts, because once again, I'm not job searching in the midst of a pandemic, but the only difference right now is, one, what kind of jobs are actually out there. The job market has changed greatly. We all know that. Some people lost their jobs. Others are at risk of it. Some had to take pay cuts. Some had to do a couple different jobs. So it's not easy. The only other thing that I can say about interviewing and job searching right now is that, like, there's not a lot of physical interviews. Like, you're doing a lot of interviews through monitors, through Zoom meetings, through video, and I don't know how much that changes the interviewing process, other than it might make it better, but also make it a lot worse. Take a look at my resources there, and if you're still not getting some good answers, message me. You can always find me on many of my social channels, and maybe we can ask the tribe. Maybe they have some thoughts. Maybe someone who's listening to this video can drop a comment down below. Maybe they can offer some suggestions. Somebody, I think Stephanie was just responding. Thanks for sharing my thoughts. I'm currently in psych rotation, and it's definitely good experience, but I also know I wouldn't do great in that field. Yeah, no. My psych rotation in my entry-level nursing program was not enjoyable in any way for me. I had that was probably one of the worst experiences I had. And I don't want to say worse, it was the one of the few experiences where like it was not me in any way, shape, or form. I had more fun in my OB rotation, and I got more out of my OB rotation than I did my psych rotation way back in the day. There was a small part of me, for those of you that have been hanging around with me long enough, I almost went into OB, almost became an OB nurse. I was this close. I had made that decision right before I did my critical care rotation, and as most of you know in the tribe, yeah, the rest they say is history. And after I did my critical care rotation, boop, 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 all bets were off. It was like somebody opened up the gates and it was like, oh, it was meant for me. I must have made a good decision. 15 years later, I went from being a bedside nurse in the ICU to being the nurse practitioner in the ICU. So I feel like it was a fairly easy decision, I gotta tell you. Anyone else in the live feed have any questions? Ask me anything. This is the time. We're gonna hang out. I'm gonna try to cut it off at about a half hour. So replay after a half hour, everybody loses interest, and quite honestly, I got other things I got going on. We all got adulting to do. I'm gonna look up another question here that's been sitting on my screen for a while. Someone mentioned to me a while back how they don't like that all nurses are told they have to advance their career, that bedside nursing is not enough. And the wording that they used was always telling nurses to advance your career. And I completely agree with this one as well. It's interesting that, you know, I'm guilty of it as an advanced practice provider. I always do some soft recruiting with my bedside nurses that I know would be kick-ass advanced practice providers. So I usually mention it, slip it under the rug and mention it to them in passing. We talk about future career aspirations. We talk about would they want to do what I do? Do they think what I do is cool? Get a feel for what they're interested in, and I usually, you know, get a lay of the land and then spread that butter as evenly as I can and tell them why I think that they should consider becoming an acute care nurse practitioner or advancing their career, period. So I'm just as guilty. The reality is there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a bedside nurse as long as you accept what that involves. That none of us stay young forever. So the acuity level and the physical requirements for being a bedside nurse is taxing. And I knew that I had to have a plan. I also knew that I always wanted to advance my career. I knew I wasn't staying in that particular role my entire nursing career. I had goals, I had aspirations, I knew I wanted to keep going, just didn't know exactly what direction to take. And I spent the first 5 years of my career figuring that out. I hopscotched and I tried a bunch of different things. I worked in several different hospitals, I did travel nursing, I worked in a couple different departments, I did PACU, I did just about every ICU that exists. I was getting a feel for what I knew I didn't want. And that's what you have to figure out. What is it you don't want to do? So I am guilty of always promoting the advanced practice role. I probably should back off a little bit. That there's absolutely nothing wrong with being a bedside nurse, because we need them. We need them a lot. I need them. Our patients need them. I mean, bedside nurses are the linchpin. Nurses, registered nurses, nurses in general, linchpin of the healthcare system. Without them, things fall apart. Period. I think we're going to go with another question unless somebody posts something here on the live feed. Don't you love how the finger just like So it's hard for me to look, trying to get a feel for the live broadcast again. So give me a moment here, tribe. I'm experimenting with. Does it work on that side? Nope, it's got to go that side. Okay, good enough. All right, one more question. Someone asked me, do acute care nurse practitioners get assigned the less critical patients in the intensive care unit? This is a good question for anyone who has an interest in becoming a nurse practitioner in the ICU, more specifically, an acute care nurse practitioner. Somebody often the question I get is, do you get to do what the doctors do? Do you get to do what the intensivists do? Do they give you the less sick patients, and they give you the what's the best word I want to use? They give you like the secretary work. And the answer is hell no. I take care of the sickest of the sick. You name it, I take care of it. Doesn't matter who, what, where, when, how, or why. If it's my turn, it's my admission, depending on, in my area of the world, in my ICUs, in my department, there is no conversation like that. It is not which ones should the nurse practitioner or the PAC. It's not a question of which one should the APP see. The question that I'm always asked is, who did you see today? Or what notes did you write today? Because quite honestly, we all see the same patients on the unit. We share in that responsibility. We literally just divvy up who's writing the note. Who's doing the H&P? Who's doing the progress note? Who's discharging this patient? Who's transferring this patient? We share the responsibility equally. And I'm very proud of that, because there are ICUs out there that it is exactly the opposite. It is exactly what the question is asking. That some APPs in other areas of the world, in other ICUs, I could probably say that about certain, in my geographical location, that APPs, hope you guys know what APP means, Advanced Practice Provider. I say that often. It's better than saying mid-level. Don't get me started. Don't get me started on the mid-level thing. We're not going to go there. APP. So there's no such thing as the APP is only going to see certain patients or certain processes. The difference is training level and experience. So there are procedures that are only done by the physician these days because of COVID. We're trying to minimize exposure, things like that. But I'm capable and trained to do every procedure with different levels of supervision. And that's literally all I'm going to say about that. I thankfully and proudly work in a place that's never a conversation. Saw someone post something, Anthony here saying, as someone who graduated in May, I feel it's easier to find out what you don't want to do than to what you do want to do. I don't know, I like hospital nursing. I do enjoy PCH nursing. Right now I'm doing community, and it's a big learning curve I'm finding. Yeah, so, and that's good, Anthony. I mean, you're doing exactly what I did in the beginning of my career, is that you need to start figuring out for yourself what it is, what's the hard stop, what are the absolute no's for your career, and then go from there. Absolute no's for me were pediatrics and psychiatry. Those were absolute no's. Soft call would have been, if I didn't have the opportunity to work in the ICU, would I have been okay working in the ED? I sure would have tried. I would have tried it, because who knows? Maybe I would have liked the ED. I don't know. Different set of circumstances, different kind of things going on. So each to his own. The beauty of the profession of nursing is the unlimited opportunities that are out there. You are going to get out of this profession what you put into it. And most of the time, it doesn't require an additional degree. It just requires additional education, certification, and training. Now, if you so choose to want a job that requires an extra degree, then that's on you. That's your responsibility. But you can lateral to a bazillion different departments and areas of nursing without actually having to go back to school. And I think that reason alone is why nursing is probably one of the greatest professions ever. Someone said here, Sean, currently working in med-surg rotation. Whoop. Ooh, sorry, wrong button. Working in med-surg rotation as a student nurse. My goal is ED eventually. Do you think it's a good idea to try right out of school or to gather skills on the floor first? So, JT, if you've been hanging around me long enough, which you may not have, I think this whole go to med-surg and get experience is a bunch of bullshit. And yes, profanity, it's required. You can actually look it up on my YouTube channel. Type in Sean Dent, new ICU job, or med-surg for first job. Look it up. I have been very passionately and emphatic that going into med-surg to get skills first, I think, is a bunch of BS. Either the ICU or the ED is made for you, or it's not. It's not something that you might figure out. You're going to go to med-surg to learn skills that mostly don't apply to the ED. Because ED is fast-paced. So all the things that you're going to do in the ED, while we all learn the same basic skills in entry-level nursing, the ED requires a certain level of skills that are a much higher pace, and it's a very different frame of thinking. The treat 'em and street 'em idea is born out of the concept of get them in, treat them, get them out. They are not in your ED very long, and if they're in your ED long, something's going wrong. This is very little I know about the ED. I've mentioned I'm not an ED person. I've never worked in the ED, but the little bit I do know is that ED patients don't spend a lot of time in the actual ED, unlike med-surg. How long do patients hang out in med-surg? How long does it take you to do how long is the intake for a med-surg patient? Hours? Days? Whereas ED in and out, hour, in and out. Fast triage, figure it out, move them on. Treat them and street them. Either treat them and they get admitted, treat them and then they discharge home. So it's very different ways of thinking and approaching patient care. So that's why I think you would actually learn bad habits that are not going to be in your favor if you work in the emergency department. I would say the same thing if you're going to the ICU or anywhere else. If you're interested in a specialty area right out of school, do it. You're not going to know until you try. What's the worst thing that happens? You figure out it wasn't for you, or you just weren't cut out for it. There's a certain person that is made up for the ED, the ICU, and other specialty areas. You either figure that out quickly that you are made for it, or you're not. It's just that simple. One more question before we take off here. What do I think of home care nursing harder than hospital? Can't answer that one because I've never done home care in my entire life. I would be offering a very convoluted opinion because I have no idea how home care nursing works other than what I've read, other than what I may have experienced as a student nurse in my entry-level nursing program, which was 15 years ago. I'm fairly certain that just like every other area of nursing, home care nursing has probably evolved quite a bit. So, yeah, I don't know how to, I don't know. JT says, glad to hear it. It was hearing different from a lot of other people. Yeah, you're going to. Everybody's going to have everybody lives in a different camp on that question, JT. And quite honestly, you can send them on over to my page. I'll be glad to direct them in the right direction. Here's the thing, is that I didn't say it was going to be easy. And that's the piece of the puzzle that hurts the most, is that Going from new grad to ED, new grad to ICU, new grad to the OR is one of the hardest things you'll ever do because of the amount of work that is required. It is a specialty area for a reason. It's difficult. It's hard as fuck. So, but if you're willing to accept that and you're going to do the work that is required, anything's possible. I will say the other thing is that you got to be supported. If you don't have a good supporting environment and someone just feeds you to the wolves and drops you in the middle of the pool and tells you to go ahead and swim, you probably won't do well. I will say that. And on that note, thanks for hanging out with me on Coffee Talk. Going to do more of these. Yes, they're going to continue to be spontaneous, so do yourself a favor and turn on notifications. Tell your friends. Tell all of your nurse crew. Oh, one last thing. If you haven't seen it on the community section there, we're trying Discord. We're going to try Discord community, Discord server, where everybody from all of the social circles in the tribe can all chat at once. So if you're not on Discord, if you're interested in Discord, go check out my community page. Go check out any of my other social media spaces. I've included a link for Discord. I'll include it in the link in the comment section of this video. And until next time, make sure you check your own pulse first.